And Grace, ready? We'll go live. We're live. Good morning. It is House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Tuesday, May 13th at 9:05. And this morning, we will be hearing the Vermont State Treasurer's reports on baby bonds and Vermont Saves. That agrees with what you're preparing to present? That's great. And we have Becky Wasserman with us today. Becky, if you take a seat, we'd love to hear what you have to say.
Good morning, everyone. Becky Wasserman, State Treasurer's Office. I am the Director of Economic Empowerment, and I am here to talk about the Vermont Saves Program and baby bonds. And just wanted to give a little context that I was first hired at the Treasurer's Office to serve as the Executive Director of the Vermont Saves Program. And then when the legislature passed the baby bonds program last session, the Treasurer's Office decided to create this new economic empowerment division that sort of encompasses both of those programs and will soon encompass the medical debt abolishment project that you all just recently passed and similar types of initiatives that are really aimed at programs for building financial security, and equitable access to economic opportunities for Vermonters. So when we had submitted our report earlier this session, we combined our reporting requirements for Vermont Saves and baby bonds under this new division. And our hope is going forward that these will sort of both fall under this reporting to the legislature going forward. The report that was submitted back in January had some updates on both of these programs. It's been a little time, so I can provide updates to the updates for the committee. But I can start first with Vermont Saves, if that works.
Yeah.
So as a reminder, the Vermont Saves program was passed by the legislature in 2023, and it is a state facilitated auto IRA program, which means that it is a program where employers who do not already offer a workplace retirement plan and have 5 or more employees, they are required to enroll their employees into the Vermont Saves program. It is an opt-out program, so employees are enrolled, and if they don't want to participate, they don't have to, but they do have to opt out of the program. The state has partnered with a third-party vendor called Vestwell, who is the one who is serves as our record keeper and the program administrator for the program. And they are the ones who are sort of facilitating, who hold the account. Actually, they work with BNY Mellon to be the custody of the accounts. And so they're facilitating the program for the State Treasurer's Office. And we also, as part of the legislation, we were authorized to enter into partnerships with other states to try to make the program more efficient. And so last May, we entered into an agreement with the state of Colorado, which is called the Partnership for a Dignified Retirement. And there are now 5 states that are part of that program. So it includes Vermont, Colorado is the lead state, Maine, Delaware, and Nevada just recently voted to join our partnership. And so we are all we have our independent state auto IRA programs, but we are sort of sharing resources to kind of, and it will give us lowered fees as well for participants to be part of this partnership. So that was an exciting move for the state of Vermont this past year. The program, we launched our pilot in October of 2024, and we had 7 employers who were part of our pilot program. And then we opened up for a full statewide launch on December 1st of last year. The enrollment period was set at 3 months. So we had enrollment from December 1st to the end of February. And we do, so, and we are still enrolling employers. So the way we identified employers who would be eligible for our program is we worked with the Department of Labor to get a list of all the employers in the state who have with their unemployment insurance division. And we sort of filtered down employers who had 5 or more employees, and then filtered it down further to figure out who had filed a Form 5500, which would sort of indicate that they already offered a retirement savings plan. And through that process, it is not perfect, but we came up with a list of about 7,000 employers who would need to register for the program. We do think that list is a little bit high right now because there are some retirement savings programs that you do not need to file a Form 5500 for, like a SEP or a simple plan. So we are trying to get a more accurate list as we go along. But that was a list we started with. The enrollment process so far has gone well. We have almost 1,100 employers who are registered. We have about 2,700, a little over 2,700 funded accounts, and about 625,000 in assets under management. We are going to continue the sort of enrollment process, although the deadline has officially sort of ended at this point. We do have the ability to impose penalties, but the treasurer's office is not inclined to do so for as long as possible. So we're going to sort of switch to focusing on outreach to those employers that have not yet registered for the program to just keep getting the word out and trying to get enrollment up before we sort of move to a pre-enforcement phase.
Dave had his hand.
Question about qualifying for this. There are some employers who have a wide array of employees. Some have, part-time hours, some maybe intermittent or something like that. And not everybody qualifies for the corporate retirement thing. Is this Vermont Saves available to them? Is it mandatory and opt-out for them, just like it would be anybody else?
That's a great question. So we do have some restrictions based on the federal ERISA law. And so one of those is that if an employer already offers a plan, but even if it's not offered to every employee at that place of employment, nobody would be eligible for Vermont Saves at that employment. However, if you had a situation where you're just asking about if they have no plan, but they have some part-time or seasonal or temporary employees, we did do a rulemaking last July, and it was became effective on January 1st of this year. And that rulemaking makes eligibility for the program for anyone who's anticipated to work 500 hours or more in a calendar year. So we were trying to make the program accessible to people who work part-time, temporary, or seasonal jobs. By trying to expand, by making it not just full-time employees, but expand it to those types of employment as well. In part because typically, part-time employees don't have access to retirement. So we were trying to, expand access as much as possible.
Casting a wider net, as it were. Very good. Thank you.
2 questions. Number one, is there a costly employer? I mean, because you're saying mandatory enrollment.
Right. Yeah. So also a great question. The state of Vermont does not impose a fee on employers. Basketball does not impose a fee on employers. There is a time cost and a cost based on, this program operates by having the contributions that an employee makes into their Roth IRA account done through payroll deduction. And the reason for that is because just statistically, people are 15 times more likely to save for retirement if it's done through their workplace. And so having that connection to their payroll deduction makes a huge difference in someone's sort of motivation to save for retirement. However, I think I do acknowledge that there's, could be a cost to the employer for if they are the ones doing the payroll, or if their payroll company is, charging them to make those, deductions in addition to what other withholdings they're making. Some payroll companies don't charge, some do. Vestwell does have full integration with a number of payroll companies, so that it's like an automatic process. But there could be an additional sort of cost in that sense.
Seems de minimis. Second question is, if there's a company that has full-time employees, but not quite 5, are they able to opt into this?
So they are not eligible, unfortunately, at this time. So there are 11 other states that are operating state auto IRA programs. And many of them started sort of a few years before us, and some of those have, recently moved down to lowering that employee threshold. I think California or Oregon is at 1 right now, just 1 employee. And so, that is something where we would like to, in the future, we kind of wanted to launch the program, get it off the ground. I know Maine this year, I think, is going down to 3 employees as well. So we would like to lower it. I think sort of doing this work now, I'm getting a lot of feedback that a lot of employers in Vermont are small and may not have 5 employees. So I think it would be, the feedback I've heard is that it would be beneficial to lower that threshold. That being said, if an employer is not able to auto enroll their employees because, let's say, they have 4, the program is open to having someone self-enroll in it. It's a different process. It's essentially the same thing as opening your own Roth IRA account. Again, the motivation, it's a self-motivation where you have to get automatic deductions from your bank account rather than through your payroll.
So if you self-enroll, does that open it up to like people who are self-employed?
Yeah. Yeah. And we do have, we don't have a ton of self-enroll accounts. I think we have around 30, but there are people who are self-enrolling.
Good to know the options.
Yeah.
Any other questions about this program?
Can you say again how many employers have signed up so far? I know you said it, but
I think we have just under 1,000, just under 1,100 right now, that have registered. And I want to get you the correct number. We also have, so in this process, you would, as an employer that we identified through how I described through that list, you would receive a letter from us saying, we think that you are required to enroll in this program. So there's instructions on how you can enroll your employees, but there is also a way to say, state you made a mistake where we already offer a plan or we have less than 5 employees. So we're not, mandated to register. So there's a way to exempt yourself from the process. So we do have a number of employers that have exempted themselves as well. And it's just a self-certification. We're not following up on anybody.
I went through that process. It was very easy.
Oh, okay, great. I'm glad to hear that.
My business has offers a simple program. So no, it was super easy.
So there are a number of businesses as well that have exempted. So I think we have about 2,800 that have exempted themselves and 1,100 that are registered. And so right now we're sitting around a 46% where we've gotten just like no response from someone, whether or not they registered or exempted themselves. And based on working with other states, where I think we're sort of aiming, obviously we'd love 100%, but I think realistically it seems like around 70% response rate is where we're aiming for right now.
Anything else about Vermont State? Great. Tell us about baby bonds.
Sure. So baby bonds. So baby bonds, was passed by the legislature last year. It was sort of a reminder of the program. Baby bonds is, as proposed by the treasurer's office last year, was a policy tool to address, generational wealth gap, and access to, the wealth gap in the state, and it's used in other. Now there are some baby bonds pilots and programs in the country, and the idea behind them is that the state would invest a certain amount of money for a baby at birth. The way we had proposed it last year was that it was any baby born on Medicaid in the state. And we had proposed a $3,200 investment, and over time, that investment grows. And when the individual is between 18 and 30, they could access that capital to be used for spending areas. So those are education, to start a business, purchase property, and put in your retirement. And the idea is that there are, many people who sort of have a leg up because they can have access to this capital through family or the inheritance. And it makes a huge difference in your sort of economic mobility. But for people who don't, having that, $25,000 can make a real difference in, an opportunity that they choose to do once they graduate high school. And so we had proposed this program. We did not get funding for the program, but the legislature did authorize us to do a pilot. So we have started the process of creating that pilot program. We have created a baby bonds advisory committee to help us with advising on the program design and stakeholder engagement. We've been working with a few national baby bonds coalition working groups. There are 11 other pilots or 10 other pilots around the country right now. And so we meet with sort of a group to sort of share knowledge and resources on creating these pilot programs. We have begun the fundraising process through private fundraising and philanthropy. So we have, we're working on a draft fundraising proposal that we're hoping to finalize pretty soon and starting that, those asks for the money. We have also identified that we would like to do what some other pilots are doing, which is sort of an accelerated baby bonds program. And what we mean by this is that we would love to get back data to show that this is working and would be great for a statewide program. So rather than wait 18 years to get that information, a lot of other pilots are doing an accelerated program where they are getting cohorts of either maybe 7th graders or high schoolers to say to them, when you graduate high school, you will get this money, and we will be providing them with the amount that they would have gotten had it been invested, that $3,200, so around $20,000. So we, are hoping that through maybe a 5-year process, we can have some older kids in a cohort that will receive that money, and then we can get sort of data on the program to be able to come back and show that it's having the results that we think it has. We have started working with a local academic institution who is interested in doing evaluation. And we're thinking of partnering with a national research and evaluation think tank who will work with that local institution to evaluate the data. We just want to make sure we are, making sure that we're collecting the data that is useful to show the program's effectiveness. We also would like to focus the pilot we hope, the Northeast Kingdom, because we want to focus on sort of the most rural counties in Vermont. And part of the reason that we are looking at that right now is because that is where the highest rates of Medicaid births are in the state. So I think statewide, it's somewhere around 40%, but when you look at those counties, it's closer to 60%. So that is, yeah, that's an update to the update of where we are with that. We just had our second Baby Bonds Advisory Committee meeting. Our next one is scheduled for July. We're also starting to form more stakeholder groups too. We want to have a youth council because we think hearing from youth is going to be really important in this project, as well as community organizations that would be providing maybe wraparound services to these youth during this process. And then we have, I guess the final update is that we have identified sort of a program administrator who is doing this work for other pilot programs. So they are able to provide some financial education for the baby bonds recipients that we identify, to go through certain modules before, and it's more coaching and advising on how they choose, they might want to choose to use those funds that are provided to them, so that when they get them, they can have a better sense of, it's a lot of money. So what's the best use for that money? Yeah, I think I'll stop there, but happy to answer any questions.
I've been told that you haven't quite figured this out yet, but when you do, I'd be curious to know what you came up with for eligibility criteria for the program.
Yeah, so we haven't done the program design yet. That's part of, I think, the advisory committee group, I think, is going to advise on that. I think part of that will also be determined by we're going to be issuing an RFI for that evaluation partner. And I think we need to know the cohorts that we need to create to create good data.
Right.
So I think part of that will weigh into how we determine the eligibility. And then just realistically, having talked to some community organizations like in the Northeast Kingdom, I think we want to make sure that we can identify a cohort there that is sort of makes sense and has the support system there to be able to, go through this program.
I mean, I just all that to say, when we get the report of the program, it would be good to see some data on how you determined eligibility.
Oh, yes, definitely.
I don't really know anything about the program, so I do want to know at the end, is this money available to out-of-state colleges, buying property outside of the state of Vermont, building businesses outside of the state of Vermont? It's all that.
Yeah, great question. So I think one of our goals with this program is sort of that rural development and also youth retention. So for most other baby bonds programs, I think they have a in-state component to it. So buying property in the state, starting business in the state, retirement, I think is, just, it's hard to really attach it to the state, but the one that I think is trickier and I think will be part of our program design will be the education piece about whether you have to use that on an in-state university or some kind of career training. I think we would like to tie it to in-state, but because we haven't actually decided that, I can't commit to it yet.
Just the retention portion of it. I mean, you buy a piece of property in the state of Vermont, you're going to stay in the state of Vermont, or if you do a business in the state of Vermont. But if you get an education in the state of Vermont, I don't know what the percentage of people that stay when they do an education, especially in other states. My guess is that we lose a lot of youth by sending kids to different states.
Yes, and we do have on our advisory committee, some folks who are in higher education. And I think one of the things we wanted to identify with this program, not just for education, but all of the spending uses, is just what other state benefits and services are available to a young person, so that they can make that baby bond go further. So for example, can they combine this baby bond with other things available to them to stay in the state of Vermont to go to school? Because maybe they have a way to pay for, 2-year school, but maybe that baby bond will get them, 4 years of school or whatever it is. So we're trying to think of ways to, get those youth, like coordinate services to them in all areas of state benefits so that they are aware of how they can best use those funds.
So then they also would qualify for other funding.
Yes,
In addition.
that's our hope, yeah.
So for the pilot program, the accelerated study, is there any financial literacy requirements attached to that at all?
Yes, we plan on having, I think we like to think of it more as financial coaching. We have worked with, as I mentioned, we identified this program administrator who has created, actually specifically, financial education for baby bonds programs. So they have created modules, that you will have to show that you've completed. Our plan, which is something that other programs have done, is also, this program administrator has partnered with a financial advisory firm, which does have a big presence in Vermont, to make themselves available to the baby bond recipient for, financial advice. They're not required to use that firm, but it's just more of a coaching on top of that education to kind of help figure out if they, how they want to use their money. Yeah.
Huh? Oh, yeah.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, you want a question?
Great. So with a lot of what we're discussing in terms of things that we'd like to figure out, I wonder, would they require the existence of a pilot program to piece together, in terms of, understanding from a policy perspective how you might combine any windfall or boon with other extant educational programs, et cetera. And I'm, since you mentioned that this is, instead of waiting 18 years, my question is, why now and maybe not in 8 years?
So is the question, well, so if we start the project now, we anticipate the project being more of a 5-year pilot program. So we don't anticipate getting any of this information now, I guess. Does that answer your question?
Not well, because then that leaves a 13-year gap between 5 years and 18 years. And I'm just wondering, is there a chasm between the pilot program and then the initial first crop? Is that 13-year gap and all problematic?
I mean, we would love to get funding to start the program now statewide for all babies. But sort of absent having that state funding, we are turning to the pilot as a way to collect data. I think if we are sort of in the middle of the pilot and the legislature decides that the information we're getting back is helpful to show that a statewide program would be effective, I don't think there's an issue with us moving forward with that at that time.
And okay, so on the one hand, there's sort of the the pilot that is sort of meant to, I think if I recall from previous testimony and what we are hearing now, that's sort of meant to provide a financial sort of outcome similar to what would be expected had there been an 18-year sort of lead time. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, that's our hope. It's not a perfect analogy. I think there are definitely differences from a family being told when their baby is born that they are going to have this capital accessible to their child versus, maybe a teenager or middle schooler having that information and how that changes that family's decision making. But our hope is that we can get as close as we can with an accelerated program to get those results.
And I think I'm remembering now as we're talking that part of the impetus for the now is that there's the opportunities to benefit from external funding that may be available for programs that are kind of like a pilot that's up and running at this time. Do I have that correct?
Yes, I mean, we are seeking all outside private funding. There are other baby bonds pilots going, like also launching around the same time. So there could be an opportunity for sort of a shared fundraising with those other pilots at this moment. And I think there's, we've had some interest from foundations to donate to this type of project. So I think that's our hope is that we can be successful in getting that private funding to do this pilot. I don't think we can do private funding to fund the statewide program as envisioned in statute, but this is our way of moving the needle a little bit with the pilot program to get some results.
Thank you very much for your help. I appreciate that.
Questions or comments? Mayor? I just want to say, I really, since it's, first heard about it last session, I really appreciate the sort of forward thinking, trying to address generational poverty and those kinds of issues with this, we're Economic Development Committee. And I mean, at a certain level, this is doing it at really the grassroots ground level. And I remember last session, there was people who gave testimony around, how even just having, a parent who could loan them their used car was a huge difference, because that allowed them to then be able to have a better job, so they could make a little more money, they could afford, they could slowly build themselves out of the sort of generational poverty that they have been in. And so I really appreciate this work, and I'm excited to see what the data says when it comes out. Yes.
Sort of also, I agree. I think it's an interesting program to try to address that sort of wealth gap versus just the income gap. And I'm just struck, I'm looking at the website now, of just always struck by the scale differential around the state. So there's a map on the website that shows total births on Medicaid in 2021. So Essex County was 58% of them were on Medicaid, and that's 30 babies in the entire county of Essex. Versus Chittenden County, which is 27%, is 390 babies. So just scale is interesting, and I think it's really interesting. It'll be interesting to see how the study is set up, and also how, looking at how this could be used, right, for that rural economic development, where there is this, like Essex County has a lot of generational poverty, and maybe some small interventions like this could really help.
Yeah, and I think our hope is that by getting these sort of rigorous evaluation partners, we can, we'll get data for this program, but I think the data we will get will just be helpful for other, sort of state programs. We're thinking to get sort of good, valid data, we need to have a sort of a cohort, like a control group that is maybe not receiving baby bonds. We need maybe one that's just receiving the wraparound services, and then one that's receiving sort of wraparound services and the funds. And that way we can get better information for the state on how this impacts the outcomes for people.
I just want to voice my support for it. I spent much of my young adulthood in the low income housing projects, and it's a thing. I mean, there were people there 3 generations, grandmother, mother, daughter, that were just stuck in this rut. And I think this will go a long way toward bringing them out. My own wife couldn't go to college because she couldn't afford to. And she came out of a similar situation. So I very much love this program, and I hope we can make it all the way.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it, and appreciate all the support for the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
That both reports.
Yeah. Yeah.
We did, I will mention, I'll take a moment to mention that we did have some language that we were hoping to have some language changes for the pilot. And those, I'm happy to talk about them more, but it's really aimed at, right now, there's no additional ongoing reporting to the legislature on the pilot. So we wanted to add some sort of accountability to the legislature about what we're doing. We wanted to add some framework for how we're actually building our pilot. Right now, it's just giving us authority to do a pilot sort of in the same way that the trust was created in statute. And because this is a short-term pilot that we're looking at, we wanted to separate out the language of the pilot from that trust program, because it, just being a pilot, it's going to be structured differently. We're investing the money short-term, not long-term. We need a different fund, not a trust fund, according to our accounting folks. And we just wanted to have more of a framework of the things we needed to do to build the pilot. So some of those things were adding in language that said, we can get an evaluation partner. We would be doing ongoing reporting and then have a final report to the legislature. And so happy to answer any questions about that, but that was the motivation for wanting those language changes this session.
I think you're talking with the vice chair about those, working with. Anything else? Becky, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
We're on the floor. Reminder that there's resolution congratulating Cassie Bohemus from Vita on her retirement, thanking her for her service to Vermont. Don't know how long the floor is. We really don't have anything yet scheduled for this afternoon, so we'll play it by ear. And we're going to have some conversations. Edie and I will be having conversations with Joint Fiscal Office and Chair of Appropriations on 122 to better understand what's in, what's out, what needs to be right, what language needs to be in there, what doesn't, as far as appropriations go. We started looking at that, I think, towards the end of the week. Hopefully we'll be able to look at S69. See where we're gonna go with that. And we have to talk about, we have to see if we have time to take a ride down to what's the name of it in Chicago. Yes, which would, plastics. Take a look at that. So we're working on that. I know Ways and Means is working on additional language on 7. See what that brings us.
Language subsequent to the 2.1.
Yeah. But I don't know if there's gonna be enough to get everybody to they want to be, but let's see.
I didn't quite catch, but what's for this afternoon?
Nothing like
Nothing, I think.
that. Of course.
I shouldn't have printed out all those bills.
depends on how long the floor is gonna be.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if the floor is done at lunchtime and I'll come back here for 1 o'clock or whenever lunch finishes, come back in here, we'll see what.
We got plenty to do.
Okay.
We'll fill it out somehow.